Hello and welcome everyone, a new episode of Money Means Business. Today we are going to discuss a lot of economic events which took place recently, and the most important of which is an incident which took place today, or a meeting in specific, and also the Egyptian participation in one of the most important economic gatherings worldwide. Well, we are going to go to this in the second part of our episode, but we are going to start with what happened today regarding the WEF, or the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum, with its head, it was such a delegation coming here to Egypt to make many summit talks, let's call it this way. They met with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, discussing a number of issues of mutual concern, particularly the Egyptian reform, the Egyptian economic reform, the Egyptian economic structural reform, which took place in the past period and resulted in a number of regulations and a number of mega projects taking place on the ground. Despite the challenges and changes that are taking place around us, and despite the global economic crises which are taking place all over the world, Egypt is there on the right track. And this is not my words. These were the words of Borge Brande, who said that the forum is really praising Egypt's substantial progress in economic reform, attracting investments, but there is a lot more to do. These were only some very few steps in a long journey, the journey to Egypt 2030, to the new republic. Nothing is going to impede our path. And as I said, it's not my word, it's the words of international entities and their delegations who came here to Egypt to meet with the president and with our economic circle to speak in more details about what's going on the ground, because we are not speaking about words, it's not theories, it's not ink on paper. We are talking about things which are tangible. Mega projects are taking place on the ground or under construction. Well, we are going to comment on that, and we are going, as I said, to go to the other event which took place in Brasilia, with the Egyptian participation in Rio's summit, and President Sisi was there upon an invitation from his Brazilian counterpart Lula da Silva. All this and more in a very rich episode and with a very special guest. But let's start with this detailed comprehensive report, and we are going to return back with more, so stay tuned.
G20 is an international forum that brings together governments and central bank governors from 20 countries and the European Union. The organization was founded in 1989 with the aim of discussing policies related to global financial stability. The G20 has expanded its agenda since 2008 with the participation of heads of government or heads of state, as well as finance ministers, foreign ministers, and think tanks. The G20 consists of 20 member countries, in addition to the European Union. The latter is represented at the group summits by the European Commission and the European Central Bank. The economies of the G20 member countries together represent about 90% of global gross domestic product, 80% of world trade, 2/3 of the world's population, and about half of the world's land area. With the G20's growing stature, after its inaugural Leaders Summit in 2008, the group's leaders announced on September 25th 2009 that the group would replace the G8 as the main economic council of rich countries. The establishment of the G20 is the latest in a series of post-World War II initiatives aimed at greater international coordination on economic policies, including institutions such as Bretton Woods, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. The establishment of the G20 was proposed at the Cologne Summit of the Group of 7 Industrialized Nations in June 1999 and was formally established at a meeting of G7 finance ministers on 26th of September 1999 with the inaugural meeting scheduled for 15th and 16th of December 1999 in Berlin. A 2004 report stated that the group was originally founded on the initiative of German Finance Minister Hans Eichel, then the G7 president. However, Canadian Finance Minister Paul Martin was considered the principal architect of the formation of the G20 at the finance minister's level. The G20 idea came in response to a series of massive debt crises that spread across emerging markets in the late 1990s, starting with the Mexican peso crisis, then the Asian financial crisis of 1997, and the Russian financial crisis of 1998. In a rapidly globalizing world, the G7 and G8 were no longer able to provide global financial stability, so it became necessary to establish a new, broader group of major world economies, which would give new voice and responsibilities. The summit topics vary from year to year. Building and sustaining prosperity was the theme of the 2006 G20 ministerial meeting. It also included achieving sustainable growth, global energy reform of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, and the impact of demographic changes, most notably by the aging of the world's population. On October 11, 2008, after a meeting of G7 finance ministers, US President George W. Bush stated that the upcoming G20 meeting would be important in finding solutions to the emerging economic crisis of 2008. As of 2021, there are 20 members in the group: Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, the European Union, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, South Korea, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Spain is a permanent guest. In addition, G20 guests each year include Spain, the chair of ASEAN New African Countries, the chair of the African Union, and the representative of the new Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, and a country invited by the presidency, usually from its region.
Yes, the G20 summit is going to be the main second segment of our episode, and our first segment, as I said, is going to be about the important visit of the WEF president and his accompanying delegation today to Egypt. But before we start, let me first welcome my dear guest live here in the studio, Dr. Hanan Abdellatif, expert of international investment. Thank you very much for being with us, Dr. Hanan.
Always pleasure to be with you.
Long time no see, by the way,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Inshallah, we are going to see you in more episodes of our program. Let's start immediately. As I said in my intro, we do have a lot to speak about. And today, the visit of Borge Brandi, the WEF president, it's not only about the timing of the visit, it's about the high-ranking delegation. It's about discovering together in his meeting with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, or the main topics he tackled with the president about structural reform and about the potentials of Egypt as an investment hub, not only to the Middle East but to Africa and to the whole world, and much more about the steps taken on the ground to implement what we have agreed upon, as we already had a strategic partnership with the WEF since 2020.
I think this is very important, and the timing is more important than the visit, the timing. Because I can see in the last few months, till now, is more steps of international organization in the world, economic organizations, they are stepping to Egypt. They are taking more serious steps to Egypt because they know how we are very important. And confirming that the government took very serious steps actually in the last year in restructure the economy of Egypt and the whole system, which encouraged many of the investors in the world and encouraged this international organization to look at Egypt in a different way, in a higher way, and to include Egypt in the international system of the economy. I'm sure that we will be one day, and very soon, by the way, and you remember my word, one of the top 10 economies in the world, not just in the area.
By the way, many people are going to say that you are very optimistic and ambitious in the same time.
I'm sure of what we are saying, because this period of time is just for a while, but not forever. And I can see, out of my point of view, out of many of the events taking place, out of many of the things happening around us, that Egypt will be, and for sure, one of the top 10 economics in the world. This is a fact, by the way. Not for now, but in the very, very near future, inshallah.
Of course, we hope so. Also, President Sisi was very much keen to speak about the share of the private sector and the foreign private sector, and to invite or to call on them to come and to invest here in Egypt, particularly in the fields of top priority like energy, renewable energy, artificial intelligence. And in more than one occasion, the head of state said that artificial intelligence is the future of everything, in addition to communications and digital transformation. How do you see these sectors or these fields as all the time depending on to modernize our industry at a time that we do transfer technology but localize industry, and to depend on local components for more than half of our production?
Yes, because I hear the President Sisi talking more than once, actually in more than one event, about having all these modern industries in Egypt, because we have to be in the race, we have to be on the track with the other countries. Actually, artificial intelligence now is very, very important. Maybe we didn't hear about this for years, but if you hear about the artificial intelligence or the AI 5-10 years ago, you were saying what we need it for. But now the whole world depends on that. Look at Elon Musk and his Tesla cars, and it's all working with the international artificial intelligence. So President Sisi is trying to push Egypt into the track to be in the race, you know, because we have to be in the race. We have to be part of the race. All these modern industries should be part of the world economy, which is coming. And we have to be the main part of the world economy. So I think the President Sisi has a very, very, very smart point of view to open these fields for now, because now or forever, now or sorry or never. So it has to be now that we can attach to these industries with the modern world and modern countries and the big economist countries in the world.
After this meeting, also the WEF President Brandy, along also with his accompanying delegation, held another meeting, but this time with Dr. Rania Al-Mashat. Of course, she was there. Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, Dr. Hassan Al-Khatib, Dr. Badr Abdelati, our ministers of, respectively, of international cooperation, of trade and investment, and of foreign affairs. They were there in the meeting with the president, but in another meeting, they discussed other issues, and in detail, as of course you know that Al-Mashat is the one who is responsible for this file, and they discussed not only digital transformation but empowering women, green technology or green economy, going into more details. How do you see this partnership, and taking into consideration that the state is really exerting the utmost efforts to attract women, new women entrepreneurs, or the new startups, in addition to the private sector in all domains?
That's perfect, because it gives a very strong and powerful point to the society. We are not talking just about the economy as a whole, but we are talking about the social level of the people, that we encourage women to have their own small business and small parts. And this is, by the way, the trend in the world now, you know, encouraging the very, what we call the mini business, and the mini, you know, the beginning of the business for these people. But I have to tell you, because you mentioned something very good about the green economy, because the climate changes now in the world.
Yeah.
It's really terrible, and it's really very tough, and it's really very serious. It's getting very serious year after year. So going for the green economy now is not an option.
Yeah.
And we have to follow that, because this is to save and to secure our life, the atmosphere of the human being. So Egypt, I think, is going very, very strong and very, very serious and very, very successfully, in a successful way, in the way that all the big countries, what we call the powerful countries in the world, going. So the green economy now, it's no option for that, no choice, and we have to follow for the future, even not for now, not for this year, for the future of our generations.
Yes.
So the President Sisi always confirmed that. Always he talks about this, and about the effects of the climate changes everywhere, and it will affect us as it will affect the whole world.
It's really affecting
it's
Africa
already,
in specific, more than any other part of the world. Unfortunately, we are paying the dear price of the catastrophic mistakes of the others. But you know, also something happened today which is very significant. Right after this meeting of President Sisi with Brandy and his accompanying delegation, he had another meeting with Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli and Minister of Trade and Investment Dr. Hassan Al-Khatib. They spoke about the foreign trade system, about decreasing the tax, about decreasing the time of custom clearance, meaning that we do not only have meetings, we implement on the ground what should be done of steps to make the deals a story of success, not only deals.
President Sisi always confirmed that the government has to help and to support and to assist all the investors locally and the international investors too. And that's why he's leading himself. I can see that he's leading this file of making all the regulations easier, making facilitations in all the kind of investing. He is the one really, he's pushing and he's supporting that file himself.
Yeah, and for example, the golden license, when it was mentioned, so many startups did not imagine that, oh, this is going to take place on the ground. No, it happened, and I'm not going to say thousands, at least hundreds of investors now are benefiting from this golden license.
Definitely, and more are coming. This is encourage more people to think about it and to come. Because this golden license, by the way, and having all the regulations done in one window, and in one day, makes people really encouraged to come and invest in Egypt, and that was, I can see that this is the most important step.
Amen to that. And simply, whenever we are exchanging our views with our allies, and to know that uniting together, cooperating together is not a luxury, it's a must. This was some of the things, or of the important slogans of the president, particularly when he meets with his counterparts in different occasions like the G20 summit. In the G20 summit, President Sisi was there representing Egypt upon an invitation from his Brazilian counterpart, but this was not the first time in the G20. When India was the chairperson, we were there. When China was the chairperson,
and
we
Japan.
were there, or Japan. So we are there because we are Egypt. How do you see the frequent invitations to President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of the Arab Republic of Egypt, to participate in such meetings?
You said is the frequent visits and frequent invitations. Egypt is invited. And this means that Egypt is the main country in the area and the most powerful country in the area, and they look forward for a stronger economy for Egypt, and that's why they started this to attach Egypt with a big economy events and the big groups of the economy in the world, like the Group of 20. The Group of 20, by the way, now is the most important in the world. It includes most of the countries from everywhere. And this group, by the way, it has a very high percentage of the economy of the world, of the trade, the international trade of the world. And it helps Egypt, and we help them. By the way, we are the main part because we export, we import. The trade between us and the G20, by the way, increased from last year. It was about $55 billion. And in 1 year only, it increased about $6 billion. So you can imagine that the trade, just the trade, I'm talking about just the trade change between us and the 20 G countries, this year it's about $61 billion. Can you imagine the trade open market for the Egyptian products and Egyptian fruits and oil and many other stuff?
Foreign investments from G20 nations in Egypt rose to 12 billion
exactly.
American dollars in the 2022-2023 fiscal years, up from just 8.7 billion the previous year. But you know, experts are saying that when we talk about 12 billion from the G20, still for us, it's not the ceiling. I mean, our dreams are endless. We do not have limits when it comes to our potentials. How do you see these numbers? I mean, sufficient, a start, only a first step in a long journey? What?
I can see it as a step in the journey. But it's not bad. It's not bad. But it's promising because, again, we started already also in Egypt to reform our structure, our economy structure, and to attract investors in a better way than before. We have to admit.
Sure.
We have to admit. You know, the bureaucracy before, the long way of regulations, and it used to take months for each investor, that didn't really encourage many investors because of the regulation, not because
of anything else.
Exactly. We are usually a big country attract investors and investment, but the regulations was really hard for them. Now we started to break all this democracy and all these rules and all these steps for the regulations, and that's why I can say that this is a good beginning. This is not what we need. We need more, definitely, and Egypt deserves more. But I think it's a good step in the I'm not saying long journey. It's a journey coming soon, inshallah.
Inshallah. Let's quote some of the statements which were said by the President in his speech, particularly when it comes to the theme of this edition of the G20, fighting poverty and hunger. Egypt firmly believes that fostering balanced global partnerships with developing countries is indispensable in combating hunger and poverty and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Direct to those developed countries who are unfortunately the reason of the poverty and hunger of others. How do you see this as frank and clear from the President?
His word, the President's word, by the way, in the G20 was maybe one of the strongest words. Always his words are strong, but that was one of the strongest because, as you said, Nermeen, that was very direct. And to the people that they are the reason behind that, the reason behind that. So it was, you know, face-to-face confrontation between them. He means what he was saying exactly, and he wanted to clear it for them that this is caused by them, so they have to be part of how to solve this problem in the world. And also he talked about many serious files and many urgent files like the immigration between the countries and the number of, you know.
The illegal migration, but thank God we already managed to solve this problem.
With the law.
Unfortunately, there are still people who are still dreaming with the West or the European dreams and going from the Libyan coast, for example, to in French boats, which unfortunately I'm not going to decide to stop to kill them or stuff like that, but they do not reach anything.
They do not survive.
They do not survive. But let me continue with the President's speech, as when he spoke about this, he also mentioned the Egyptian reaction, the Egyptian kind to manage. The presidential initiative of Decent Life or Hayat Karima is, I think, an initiative which is unprecedented. There is no country which has shouldered the responsibility of raising the standard of living of more than 60 million people in a country like Egypt, facing all the challenges and changes from all fronts. He spoke about it, seeking to improve the living standards of half of Egypt's population. How do you see mentioning that?
Because he wants to say indirect, which is I felt it. You know, it's like you are the ones behind for the other countries, behind what was going on in the area. Because we were affected like all the other countries in the world. And definitely the economic crisis that we have in the world now, which is covering everyone and everyone is suffering from because of the wars and because of what's going on in Gaza, in Lebanon, here and there, it affected the economy, 100%. The whole economy of the world, Russia and Ukraine and China and...
The security of the Red Sea.
The security which affected Suez Canal.
By the President.
Exactly. But in the middle of all of this economic problems, which is not caused by us and not because of us, I mean, we were affected like the other countries, but it's not our problem from the beginning. But the country did something really great to keep the standard of living for some of the big majority, actually. We consider like a very high percentage of the population of Egypt by this Hayat Karima or something like the other medical project, Misaha, and some more of this social support with a big percentage of the population. Although we are not the reason as Egypt. Egypt is not the reason. And the President Sisi confirmed every time, in every event and every conference, international, everywhere, that we are suffering. Suez Canal is affected, the economy. The tourism is affected. We cannot deny that tourism is affected. Thanks God it's still working, but not as before. Okay, this is the second source of the foreign currency. We have the people, they are working abroad, the Egyptians, they are working abroad, they are still sending foreign currency to Egypt, but not as before. I mean, we are affected by what's ever going on in the area, but we didn't stop, and we developed all these social projects to keep the standard of the Egyptians. So the country is doing more effort now than before, because when the economy is stable in the world, we are stable too. We are one part of the world. And when the economy of the world is going ups and downs because of what's going on, and it's really affected all even the big countries, by the way, in the States, United States of America, in Germany, in Britain, some of the factories closed, and some of the shops closed, and some of the big business closed, and they are really affected in a very hard way. So if Egypt can stand for that, and what we are struggling, yes, but we are doing our best, and we are doing very well compared to some of the other countries. Mm-hmm. And thanks to the President Sisi, and I have to say that clear, that this man, I discovered, by the way, I always look at him as a general and military person and political, very smart political person, but I can see his point of view even in the economy. He's very smart in the plans of how to struggle and how to avoid some of the crises which happen to some other countries. But Egypt, thanks God, and by his wise and wisdom, we avoided all these problems so far.
And to speak about this in such a summit, it's some of the propaganda we should do. Simply, if we can manage until the moment, and we can continue with presidential initiatives like Hayat Karima or Decent Life, then how we are going to receive our investors, the foreign private sector, the businessmen, who when they come here, they know on the ground that we have a lot of potentials, and that there is such a leap when it comes to the infrastructure, to the new smart cities, to the industrial zones scattered all over Egypt, whether in the new Suez Canal or in Upper Egypt. So simply just come with innovative ideas, and you are going to find what you need.
Exactly, because we are ready now. All the infrastructure is done, all the routes, the airports, the ports, we added many new airports.
Electricities,
and by the way, this is
you name it.
Everywhere in Egypt, not in the main cities, not in the big cities, but it's everywhere, even the small cities, even in Sinai, it's really going everywhere. And we have many projects, but the infrastructure for these projects is already there. So we founded the base first, and then we invited the people to come and to have their whatever they need from our projects. And by the way, all the smart cities that the President called for, that we have to build some smart cities, and we started already. This is in the world now. We cannot avoid that. We have to make smart cities, because this is the
future.
The future, exactly, like the artificial intelligence, like the smart transportation, if we have to cope with that. Mm-hmm. So all what we are doing now in Egypt is coping with the future, because we cannot be late for all these countries doing this. We have to be in the same line and in the same track with them, mm-hmm. because Egypt is a big country.
Of course. And on the sidelines of the summit, President Sisi had a number of meetings with his counterparts, and of course we are going to start with the Brazilian president, with Lula da Silva, who was very much keen to hold some summit talks with President Sisi even before the start of the G20. And this is a special or a strategic relation, if I may call it this way, because Egypt and Brazil now are members of the BRICS.
BRICS, exactly.
So there are many things to speak about, and there are many files of common interest. What can be achieved more? Because in such occasions, the President is very much keen to have a business delegation, to meet with businessmen, to meet with those who are responsible for the economic files in their countries to make sure that he made the maximum benefit of his journey. How do you see this?
I think the difference this time, Nermeen, is to encourage more of the private sectors from Brazil and from the other countries shared in the conference to come and join some private sectors projects here with even business people. It's not all now about government business to government business or government investment in Egypt. No, he's encouraging more, as you said, that he wants some delegations to come, business people to come and meet with our business people here and to encourage creating some new projects as a private sector. So he's encouraging that, which is really great. Because as you need the government projects, which is supporting all the country, but encouraging and supporting the private sector is a must for any big economy in the world. So what we need from Brazil more, and what the president he was trying to discuss to get to better result, more business, more delegation, as you said, more trade between Egypt and Brazil. We need to increase the value of the trade. We have already very big trade change between Egypt and Brazil. But I think after the last meeting between the two presidents, I think they agreed to have a higher level of exchanging the trade between the two countries, export and import, because this is foreign currency for Egypt, and opening a new market for Egypt in Brazil in some new products that they never had it before.
Amen to that. And also of the topics which were discussed, particularly with the Egyptian participation in the G20 summit, Egypt is all the time bearing in mind that Africa is our strategic depth. And we can be the gate to Africa when it comes to trade, to imports, to exports, to even talk about how the climate change is really affecting Africa and how to stop that from happening. We are with the development of all African states, all African allies. How do you see also mentioning Africa and taking Africa into consideration as the virgin continent, which can be a source of development or a source of wealth for the whole world?
I was about to say that Africa is a source of wealth since the beginning, the history. But I can see that President Sisi, maybe he's the only or the first Egyptian president, he is giving the right care to Africa. I'm saying the right care. I'm not saying the others didn't give care, but they were really didn't give that much care to Africa as it should be. But President Sisi, look at his movement in Africa. Politically, economically, now he's involving Africa more, African countries more. In the future, Africa will be a source of food. By the way, the best lands ever, fertile soil in Africa. The river Nile and the water, which will be the problem for the future for the world, Africa. It's the wealth of the natural resources in Africa is very high. President Sisi, I can see him as the smartest president ruled Egypt, and it's not a compliment, but he's looking for many things that it will help in the future, and he's thinking out of future way, you know, not now, we need these people, because one day I call Africa myself is the basket of food in the world. So it's normal to mention Africa in this
regard.
Yeah.
Of course, when it comes to Egypt sheltering 10 million refugees, and this is added or another burden, and I think we are the only country in the whole world who do not call them refugees. They are our guests. But also to mention that and to make sure that they are really well cared about in Egypt, despite this economic burden. I think this was also a topic when it was raised. It gained the admiration of the whole world. And it's normal to gain admiration, because what Egypt is doing for more than 10 million guests is great.
As you said, we are the only country, we don't call them refugees, we call them guests. And they are working and they are living and they are sending their kids to schools. But 10 million people extra over the population is too much for any country, not just for Egypt.
Yeah.
And in all these challenges happening in the world now, it's even worse or more hard than the normal scenario case. But President Sisi usually in any event, any conference all over the world, he meant many times, I heard him to mention that. Why? Because in Europe they don't accept that. In Europe they don't accept that. They call them refugees and they have a special
asylum
treatment
seeker
for them.
centers, and we know that people
That
were dying there.
if they don't arrest them,
Yeah?
if they were still alive, because some of them they go and they are arrested 100%. They don't give them even chance for life. But we are welcoming the people, but the great countries, they have to consider this.
Yeah.
The United Nations, they have to consider this because it's part of their job. It's part of their job. So they have to look at Egypt as something different. They have to support. We don't need anything, but they have to support up to the international law. It's not because we have some economic problems all over the world, and Egypt is part of the world, so we have the same. And we are welcoming them, fine, and they live in the population of Egypt, and we don't make any separation in treatment, facilities, services. But the international community, they have to consider that very well. And that's why President Sisi is always mentioning it. He mentioned it like hundreds of times. Every event or every occasion he used to mention that we have 10 million people and we are taking care of them. But they have to consider this as well, because if we let them go to Europe,
it's not gonna work.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, as usual, I enjoyed our discussion.
Thank you. I enjoyed it too, really.
Inshallah, we are going to see you in more episodes of our program.
Inshallah, very soon.
We were very much delighted and honored to have with us Dr. Hanan Abdullatif, expert in international investment. And by this, we come to the end of our episode. But still, we are going to leave you with the most important events which took place in the past 7 days. Till we meet again same time on Nile TV International. Many thanks for watching. This was Nirmeen Abdurrahman.
The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Egypt decided in its last meeting to keep the overnight deposit rate at 27.25%, the lending rate at 28.25%, and the central bank's main operation rate and credit and discount rate at 27.75% for the 5th time in a row. The committee's decision came against the backdrop of upwards risks surrounding the inflation path during the coming period, with the continuation of geopolitical tensions. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli met with delegation of senior Chinese businessmen to study the request to establish a model Chinese agricultural city on an area of 1 million acres in the New Valley. The Chinese agricultural city will include the cultivation of strategic crops that Egypt needs, using the latest technology to save water, in addition to establishing a complex of greenhouses to grow fruits that Europe needs, as well as establishing an industrial complex to localize a number of agricultural industries. Egypt is witnessing a major boom in the automotive industry, as it has gradually begun to transform from a center for assembling cars to a regional center for their manufacture, as major international companies have entered the automotive industry in Egypt, including Egyptian, Chinese and Malaysian, in addition to 5 new factories, preparing to start manufacturing cars in Egypt for the first time, which means that the local market will witness the entry of new brands soon, which increases the diversity of options for the Egyptian consumer. The United Nations revealed in its latest report published by the Information and Decision Support Center the most prominent Egyptian industrial exports to Africa, which are represented in building materials, fertilizers, chemical products, food industries, printing and packaging, and the largest importers of Egyptian industries are Libya, Sudan and Algeria. Mohammed Fahmy, Assistant Minister of Tourism and Antiquities for Economic Affairs, said that Egypt achieved a record number of incoming tourists last year, with 14.9 million tourists, adding that these rates will be exceeded as it is expected to reach more than 15 million tourists. In an unprecedented move, the largest Polish companies, known for their extensive experience in the furniture industry and their partnership with the largest furniture retail companies in the world, announced their plans to establish a huge industrial complex in the New Alamein city. This complex will constitute a turning point in the Egyptian furniture industry and promises a promising future for Egyptian furniture exports to the markets of Europe and America. Egypt recently signed an agreement to build a new 5-gigawatt solar power plant near Lake Nasser in an important step towards enhancing its renewable energy capabilities, as Egypt has the highest solar brightness in the world, according to NASA. It also has the largest artificial lake in the world, Lake Nasser in Aswan. This project aims to enhance Egypt's position as a leader in solar energy in the Middle East and North Africa. Egyptian oranges have reached the markets of Japan, Australia and Spain, although Spain is one of the world's largest orange exporters. Egyptian oranges have succeeded in imposing themselves even in its markets, not to mention Japan, which is known for imposing strict restrictions on imported foods, reflecting the quality of Egyptian oranges and their ability to compete globally.